Right now, many of you are planning on taking a trip. You might even be planning on flying. Or you may know somebody who is, a family member or a friend or coworker. And the President of the United States and his administration is trying to make it as humanly difficult for people to get around as possible. Now, I want you to follow me on this, because this is even bigger than the FAA and the airlines. This is a federal government and an imperial president completely out of control. And where is Obama? Well, I don't know where he is. Send me his schedule, will you, Mr. Producer? All I know is this has been going on now for 3 days, maybe 4, and Obama's absolutely silent about it. But we'll get to his spokesidiot, Jay Carney, in a moment. But I want you to know this from the Washington Times. The chief of the FAA told Congress today that Washington, D.C. area airports will largely escape the effects of the air traffic controller furloughs, a blessing for lawmakers who fly out of the nation's capital, writes Stephen Denon. Michael Huerta, head of the FAA, told a congressional panel that the Washington region's airports are spaced out enough and have enough spare capacity that furloughs to air traffic controllers wouldn't hurt as much here. Really, has anybody ever been to Reagan National Airport? They're spaced out enough? What does he mean, spaced out enough? The airfields? Well, ask any pilot who's ever flown in and out of Reagan National Airport, which is the airport that the vast majority of senators and congressmen and their staffers use. And they will tell you it is a very difficult airport because it was built so long ago, right on the Potomac River. You may recall that one winter, some of you, where they had that horrific accident, the plane that went into the water. The runways are not that long, and they're not spread apart. Huerta also said Atlanta should escape major problems because of the big airfield there has 5 runways, which makes it easier to space flights. Not so with New York City, and I might add, not so with LAX, O'Hara, and on and on and on with many of the big airports that will affect people there and everybody who has flights in and out of those major metropolitan airports. All of this is unnecessary. All of it. This is what you need to understand. The Wall Street Journal has a horrific editorial on immigration because the Wall Street Journal believes in open borders. It has said so in one editorial after another. In the past, it's kind of kept those secret, but I dug them up, where they believe there should be an amendment to the Constitution that says, in effect, our border shall be open. So when it comes to that issue, they're absolutely out of their minds. And consistently so over the decades, even since 9/11. Even since the border has become extremely dangerous with Mexican drug cartels. So they're irrational when it comes to that issue. They're basically toadies and cronies for agribusiness and other big corporations, being corporatists, not conservatives. But they have this issue of the FAA spot on. Spot on. And they explain this today in a way that I feel it's necessary to pass on to you. The 4% FAA spending cut that somehow delays 40% of our flights. And they say start with the FAA, better known as the Postal Service without the modern technology. Flyers directly fund. Now this is what's important for you to know. When you buy a ticket, you directly fund 2/3 of the FAA's budget through 17 airline taxes and fees. About 20% of the cost of a $300 domestic ticket, up from 7% in the 1970s. So you're already paying a fee that's hidden in your ticket cost to pay for the FAA's budget. 2/3 of the FAA's budget you're paying directly for through your tickets. Yet now the White House wants to make this agency that can't deliver what passengers are supposedly paying for even more dysfunctional. Ponder this logic, if that's the word. The sequester cuts about $637 million from the FAA, which is less than 4% of its almost $16 billion 2012 budget. and it limits the agency to what it can spend at a 2010 level. The White House decided to translate this 4% cut that has the legal discretion to avoid into a 10% cut for air traffic controllers. Now remember, 2/3 of their budget's already paid for through your ticket purchases. Though controllers will be furloughed for 1 of every 10 working days, 4 of every 10 flights won't arrive on time. What they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is they're taking as much of the cut as they can with the air traffic control system. They're moving it into the air traffic control system away from the other areas to make sure they're delaying flights. This is your government, your president. Now, the FAA projects the delays will rob 1 out of every 3 travelers up to 4 hours of their lives waiting at the major hubs. Now, Congress passed a law in 2009 that makes such delays illegal, at least if they're the responsibility of an airline. Now, under Obama's Passenger Bill of Rights, the carriers are fined millions of dollars per plane that sits on the tarmac for more than 3 hours. But sauce for the goose is apparently an open bar for the FAA gander. In other words, they can do whatever they want. No fines, no punishment, no nothing when it comes to the government. The White House claims the sequester applies to the budget category known as projects, programs, and activities. That it lacks flexibility as a result. Not so. This is a political pose to make the sequester more disruptive. Legally speaking, the sequester applies at a more general level known as accounts. The air traffic account includes 15,000 controllers out of 31,000 employees. The White House could keep the controllers on duty simply by allocating more furlough days to those other non-essential workers. Now, I've explained here before, when the government was shut down for 3 weeks, when Clinton was president and Newt Gingrich was speaker, the air system was mostly unaffected because they were considered essential employees in those towers. When it was shut down 2 or 3 times under Reagan, the air traffic system was unaffected. Now, instead, the FAA is even imposing the controller furlough on every airport equally, not prioritizing among the largest and busiest airports with the most people. San Francisco's Napa Valley Airport, with no commercial service, will absorb the same proportion of the cuts as the Central New York Radar Terminal, which covers LaGuardia, JFK, Newark International, as well as MacArthur, Teterboro, New Haven, Republic, and other regional fields. In other words, every variable that they could change to lessen the impact on you, the flying public, they instead use against you. For more than a decade, the FAA has promised to modernize and make the civilian aviation system more efficient and reliable. But the only things it has reliably generated over delays are cost and overruns, and usually both. The project, known as NextGen, is 4 years off schedule with no end in sight. The FAA's troubles are the result of bad management and a lack of oversight, according to multiple Department of Transportation Inspector General audits. A 2011 investigation found that one part of NextGen ran $330 million over budget, or half of the FAA sequester today. And then the FAA paid the contractor responsible $150 million in bonuses that were supposed to be an incentive for making the budget targets. Now the overruns are approaching $500 billion. And that's merely on one item. Meanwhile, ever since Al Gore launched a training initiative to increase the productivity of air traffic controllers in 1998, productivity has continued to fall. A larger workforce is now in charge of a smaller workload as the number of flights has dropped by 23%. As the Inspector General reports, quote, FAA data suggests that its overall staffing may not be optimal, unquote. So instead of addressing these issues and resolving them and saving you and me tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, they're punishing us. The bottom line is, when you purchase an airline ticket, they're required to put aside a significant portion of that ticket to fund the FAA and specifically those towers with those men and women. 2/3 of the budget for the air traffic controllers comes from you directly when you purchase a ticket. So we're talking about 1/3 of the budget. And so what do? Every mechanism possible. Every mechanism possible. Not to find other things to cut, of which there are many, but to pour all the cuts, or many of them, into the air traffic system. You people now who are having your travel disrupted, your businesses disrupted, your vacations disrupted, some of you flying because of medical emergencies or funerals or what have you, you people who are stuck at airports, stuck in traffic, who miss your connections, you can thank Obama and you can thank his government, because none of this is necessary. Obama has unleashed his wrath against the American people. He does it all the time. He's doing it with Obamacare. He's doing it with the mortgage system and the banking system. And now he's doing it with the airline system.